What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about 2024 because the year is now half over. It's currently June, and I want to take a look back at this first 6 months. I have definitely seen the talk that this is the worst year of video games ever and stuff like that, but to me, I have still found a lot of very fun stuff to play. I mean, it has been a bit quieter than usual, but if you're willing to go outside your normal comfort zone, there is a ton of stuff to beat. So today, I want to talk about the games that I have enjoyed the most. I haven't finished every big game, so some stuff like Pacific Drive or Persona 3 Reload or something like Rise of Ronin, I haven't beaten those yet, but of the games that I've finished, these are my picks of the top 10 best games of 2024 so far. Number 10. Hades 2. Some subscribers have told me that I'm overly brutal against early access games, that I'm too harsh or too savage to try and rip them apart, but it's just the fact that if I'm paying for a game, I expect a certain amount of polish, of presentation, and so even though technically Hades 2 is early access, this is a very complete package. It's got so many bosses, randomized dungeons, incredibly beautiful art, and addictive music. But beyond that, it's also just incredibly fun to play. Hades 2 has you trying to battle your way through the depths of the underworld for this rather fruitless quest for vengeance, but the real purpose is just that it is so dang fun. Every time you play it, you get random buffs from the gods that'll give you different abilities to attack, to cast magic, to defend, to dodge. Even after 50 runs of it, I still feel like I've barely scratched the surface to this game's incredible depth, but that specifically is why I love it. Number 9. Tekken 8. Each and every year, it feels like there's always one gigantic standout fighting game experience. That game that's not just good, but is actually standing above the rest. And for 2024, it is definitely Tekken. This game has a huge cast of characters that are pretty well balanced. I mean, there's definitely some dudes that completely kick my butt. It's also got really cool stages. It's got ridiculous combos. And more than that, it has incredibly fun social community. Like, with fighting games, I feel like sometimes you get your face ground into the dirt and it's difficult to even learn what you did wrong. But it does feel like the Tekken community is welcoming. They want you to figure it out. They want you to get better. Like, this is one of those games where I found myself kind of just browsing forums and perusing conversations to see how I can play my characters better, because even though I'm trash at it, I want to improve. But if you see me online, please go easy on me. Number 8. Another Crab's Treasure. For those that don't know this game, what you're looking at is actually the hardest game released in the last 6 months. Another Crab's Treasure is a Dark Souls style experience. It's the kind of game where you're trying to dodge roll, you're trying to parry, you're trying to power up, and more than anything else, you're attempting to not die. You're playing as this cute little crab, and he's trying to survive the darkest depths of the messed up ocean, but this is a game that's going to kill you a lot. I've put so many hours into this trying to track down and kill every optional boss, every unlockable, every little upgrade, and I feel like this is one of those games that people are going to look back on because it dared to be different. So many Dark Souls style games love to relish themselves in the macabre, to have really dark color palettes and a lot of times blood and gore galore, which I can enjoy, but I kind of respect the fact that Another Crab's Treasure went in such a different direction and made Souls its own. Number 7. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I think we can all agree that Ubisoft is typically a company that we don't think of as taking big risks. They try to make games as safe and sellable as possible, a lot of times to their own detriment. And that's part of why I really like that this game, The Lost Crown, is so incredibly bizarre. I mean, this is a Prince of Persia game, but it's a side-scrolling 2.5D Metroidvania, a game with time travel mechanics and cool duplication abilities and stuff. Like, it still feels like Prince of Persia, but it also goes beyond that. There's this interesting dance they managed to create in this that makes it so that your powers feel like they complement every aspect of the gameplay. The fact that you can just jump between enemies and do all sorts of heavy blows and then try and battle a boss that has multiple phases and can be staggered for crazy takedowns. I mean, Prince of Persia is a franchise that I've always enjoyed, but The Lost Crown is really a more memorable adventure than I've had in a long time. Like, it's the kind of game that I feel like pays homage to classic Prince of Persia in a way I didn't even know that I wanted. Number 6. Crow Country. When I was growing up, I was totally obsessed with 90s survival horror. Stuff like old school Resident Evil or Silent Hill, or of course, stuff like Parasite Eve. But I feel like those games had a very particular vibe that we don't really see anymore. Like, we still get good horror games, but there was something about that clunkiness, the bad graphics, that actually added to the aesthetic. And that's where Crow Country comes in. This is essentially a brand new PlayStation 1 game. It still has all the love and attention of a current day game, but it's very much built on the bricks of old school Resident Evil. I mean, it's a game that has really opaque puzzles. It's got really cool monster design. It's got an incredibly good story. I'll admit it, this game blew me away. Like, I did not know how perfect it would be. And then once I started playing it, I was actually sucked into just how much they managed to recreate the original magic of scares. This is a game that I feel like, don't just look at the graphics and dismiss it. This is a game that is definitely worth your attention. Number 5. Balatro. Or is it Balatro? Okay, so this is a roguelike card game. All right, so visually, not super impressive, but let me explain how it works and why it is so incredibly fun to play. So this is poker. It's a game where you're trying to just get different suits, different cards to make straights, flushes, full houses, stuff like that. But what makes this game so fun, and honestly, the reason it's just so zen to play for hours a day, is the fact that you get these power-up Joker cards. They can do stuff like actually give you special combos, extra points, larger multipliers and stuff. And I feel like the fact that this game is so randomized, but also so strategic, this is one of those projects that I can think of as a forever game. It's the kind of thing that's even months in the future or years in the future, I can still see myself just booting this up and trying a couple hands for funsies. The fact that it keeps trying to up the ante, increasing the score, increasing the difficulty, and increasing the really weird cards you get, I love Balatro. It's the kind of game that I feel like you don't get it until you freaking get it. This is a game I am hooked on for life. Number 4. Stellar Blade. Saving the world is some very difficult business. You've got to try and dodge and dash. You got to try and actually slay big, impossible monsters and stuff. But, Eve is up to the task. In Stellar Blade, humanity is pretty much extinct. There's very few people even left. And so it is her job and her other robotic companions, they are trying to restore what's left of us. But the way they're going to do this is in a very unique fashion. This is pretty much an action combat game. It's the kind of thing where you're going to be trying to do these disgustingly delicious combos that have 9,000 hits and unleashing ultimate attacks and stuff. But what I really enjoyed about it is that not only does this game look good, not only does it play good, but I really kind of admire the art of it. Like, not just the character design and the cool costumes and stuff, but the monsters look so truly alien. Like, it's so cool when you see a game that feels truly alien in nature. Stellar Blade is the kind of game that you just want to gawk at, from the destroyed locations to the beautiful cities to the silly butt shots and funky fan service. I mean, this is the kind of game that I appreciate for what they were trying to do. They had a vision and they executed it perfectly. Number 3. Helldivers 2. Now, I know at this point the term of games as a service is considered to be a net negative, like the fact that your game is always online and has battle passes and login bonuses and stuff. Like, usually that dramatically hurts the experience. The game ends up being less fun because of these stupid tagged on things. But for Helldivers 2, it genuinely makes it more fun. This is a warping and changing adventure. The idea behind this is that we're playing as these commandos, these space soldiers that are dropped onto planets with pretty much no chance to survive. You're trying to battle against bugs that shred armor or huge killbots and stuff like that. But the best part about it is that bleakness becomes its humor. These guys will talk about defending sweet liberty and just all sorts of ridiculousness about the honor of super democracy and defending super Earth. But the best part of it is definitely just playing with your friends. Me and my buddies have put over 100 hours this year into just this game. We used to literally log on and just sit there and then wait for everybody to get off work and start running missions on the highest difficulty possible. There is a beauty to this game. There is a humor to this game that I'm not sure I've ever experienced. I hope this has a long life. I hope they keep introducing factions and weapons and weird balances, because I am definitely hooked. I just want to keep playing it and see what weird new future changes we're going to experience together for democracy. Number 2. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Of all the games we're talking about today, Rebirth is by far the biggest, and I feel like that's by a huge margin. This is such a grand scope, it's difficult to even explain it. So when we first started hearing about the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, I think we thought it would be closer to the source material, but this game just completely explodes the concept of FF7. So it is the original story, kind of, but now with new side quests, hundreds of mini-games from stuff like chocobo racing and card games and exploration and capturing towers. But I think the reason that Rebirth really grabbed me as a Final Fantasy fanatic is the fact that it feels like it is trying to be bold. It is trying to be new. I think when I found myself just driving in a random direction in Cosmo Canyon, or just checking out some random vista or stuff like that, or sometimes just grinding to level up, I kept just wanting to set down the controller and say, how is this so big? When they first started charging $70 for games, a lot of times people asked the obvious question of, okay, if this game costs $10 more than my standard fare, does that hypothetically mean that I'm getting $10 more in content? Well, this is a crazy value bang for the buck. I know people that have already put 200 or 300 hours in this game, and they haven't even done New Game Plus yet. This is insane. I put a platinum trophy. I completely did everything in the first part of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and with Rebirth, I think I'll get the platinum, but it's going to take all year. As a lover of this world, I am impressed by how much they've remixed what we know about Final Fantasy VII. Number 1. Dragon's Dogma 2. Alright, well, some people are probably going to get a bit offended that I'm putting this so high up on the list, but it really just comes down to the fact that I love Dragon's Dogma 2. I mean, it is basically a remake of the first game. It has pretty much the same story with a lot of the same beats, but the world is just so fun. Like, This is one of those games that has all sorts of different side quests. Every town you visit, every mile you walk, every ox cart you jump on, it takes you to a different spot, and it has that raw sense of discovery that I haven't really felt since something like Skyrim. Each new location we visit, from an abandoned tower that's been taken over by a dragon to fallen kingdoms or the beast tribes, or just every corner of it feels like its own independent game. Like, to me, this feels like 3 separate Dragon's Dogma games crammed together, and it has so many little details in it that I feel like highlight its genius, like the fact that there's elves and they don't speak English, but if you find one, you can learn their language, or you can find a recruit. It has this pawn system where, as you're wandering around, you can keep recruiting random players, random buddies that have different skill sets, as some of these pawns can end up being pathfinders or linguists or healers or all sorts of different specialities. And what's cool is the fact that as you're going along, you keep finding these guys, and it really much changes how you're going to play. Like, for the original playthrough I stayed as a pure casting wizard type, a sorcerer that could fly around and sort of skip puzzles, so I made my pawns more melee focused. But then, after I beat the main campaign, I started to just explore and do side quests and find weird unlockables, and maxed out every single job class, so I started playing as an archer or a warrior, or just, it was cool to change the composition of my team and my party and just play the game totally different. Now, Dragon's Dogma 2 is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, it was exactly what I wanted, and even now, I can't wait to see what DLC or expansion we get. I hope we get some sort of like Dark Arisen reimagining that comes out here next year or something that makes the game even bigger and even longer, because let me tell you, I'm ready to start a new character and beat some dragon ass. Did your favorite game not make the list? Got an idea for a future video? Be sure to put it in the comments down below. And also, like and subscribe if you haven't already. But really, just do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. You know, sometimes I kind of just fathom the fact that I have played so many thousands of hours of games just every single year. It's kind of baffling to consider that, but it's a good hobby.